So, I just finished reading Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, thanks to Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show Summer Reads Book Club. It's a very good book, and I want to talk about it, so here I am. Alright, so first things first, I pronounce certain names and places certain ways, and if that bugs you, like it bugs me, then you might want to stop watching this video altogether. So I pronounce the names Zaylee, Zane, Amari, Saran, Kayea, Ibeji, Ilorin, Gombe, Lagos, and Einan. I'm sorry about that last one. It's probably wrong, but it's the one that makes the most sense to me, so his name is Einan. Okay, if you pronounce those the same way, welcome to the video. If you don't, but you can live with it, also welcome. So I'm going to start off with a really general non-spoilery section, so if you haven't finished it, you can still watch this part. Children of Blood and Bone is a very long book, but it's the kind of long book that you like because you get to experience a lot of the world and you get really deep into it, and it's not, cut short, and all of the characters are really fleshed out. So actually the length of this book is perfect. It's a lot like other YA novels, so fantastic length, fantastic story. Okay, so the pacing in this book was really good. I never felt bored. The only thing was sometimes I got annoying when they switched perspectives. Like, it would switch and I would be like, I don't really care that Zaylee is riding on Nyla. I want to know what happens with Einan. Normally, I don't like first-person narration. I feel like I'm reading somebody's diary or just kind of hearing their thoughts, and I'm like, who talks like that? But for this particular book, I thought it really worked because we got to see different characters' perspectives, and it really worked because we switched perspectives so often, so it didn't feel like a whole bunch of Zaylee, and then we got to switch to Amari and Einan. I love that this world was something that held an origin story, but it was not only the setting of our land, but also it was interconnected to the plot. Sky Mother creating the gods and the goddesses, and then sharing that with the children of blood and bone. Even the mercenaries at the end were part of the gods' plan. It also developed well because it wasn't like we started out and it's like, here's a gigantic story of how we began. Like, Mother Agba could have definitely done that in her first kind of monologue in chapter 1, but she didn't. The way we started out was that we'd actually kind of lost our belief in the gods, so now we believe that the gods either don't exist or they were here and they left. And we end up getting the entire backstory of how our world began in the middle of the book. So we kind of learn with the characters, which I thought was really good. I thought it was interesting that in the origin story itself, it mentioned that the children of blood and bone abused the magical powers that they were given by the gods, and so then only some of them were chosen, and they were marked by their white hair. I thought that was a good detail because it led to a good plot device as a way to differentiate and divide between the classes, between the Poseidon and the Magi/diviners. People don't trust people who have powers, especially in a world where people have powers and some people don't. I mean, that's actually the entire plot of Season 1 of Legend of Korra. Okay, so that was the first of the many similarities that I found between the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe and this book. First off, Zaylee and Zane are brother and sister who live in this village, and they lost their mom at an earlier age due to oppressors who invaded them, who raided them, and these oppressors were people who were magic hating, and they wanted to eliminate everybody who had magic. So then they were left with only their dad. They eventually go on a quest to right this wrong and avenge their mom, and they bring along someone who has insight on how to do that. And then, of course, their enemy, who's hunting them on this quest, is the prince of this oppressive nation, whose entire motivation is to please his father. You can see his arc going from a confused prince to somebody who's eventually going to flip sides. And throughout the beginning of the story, you get a sense that his loyalties might shift. And of course, they have an animal buddy with them that helps them with transportation. Not that I'm complaining. I mean, I loved Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I really like these characters. They set them up in such a way that it's different, and our protagonist is a female. So now I'm going to start talking a little more in-depth about the characters and the plots. If you haven't read the entirety, just be careful going forward. Zaylee is a great character because she's a female protagonist who's tough, who's powerful, who's spiritual, and whose beliefs keep growing. She's also a protagonist who, instead of being introduced to this new world and needs to learn all about it, and then we learn along with her like other YA novels, Zaylee already exists in this world, and she's already experienced the abuse that a lot of diviners get. I thought it was great how in the beginning she was wary and distrusting of the gods, and it all started with a prayer for Bubba and Zane when they were drowning, and that kind of started her on her spiritual journey in learning with her ancestors and learning her magic. Her experiences seeing her mom die was very Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender, but it was very emotional. and I liked how that kind of carried her throughout the story. A highlight of her character was definitely fear. There was this great line where she screamed, "I'm afraid all the time." And I thought that was really great because she's either always masking her fear with her magic or her staff, but also sometimes she lets it overtake her and it ends up crippling her, especially her abilities and her leadership. She's never really been the person to stand up and decided to be the leader or a savior, and everything that was holding her back was her fear and lack of confidence. I thought Zaylee's torture at the very end was handled well. She had a great talk with Rowan on the battleship. He said, "If you can't handle this, let me know. But it's not about you." Scars don't heal very fast, of course, those scars being metaphorical also. Saran's voice kept echoing in her head, and I kept thinking, why? Like, she kept hearing this line over and over again. "I wouldn't be doing my job as king if I didn't remind you what you are." And then I thought, oh, that's how abuse survivors are, because they keep reliving their trauma and reliving their PTSD. I thought Zane was a very underrated character, and he was the only one of the main four who we didn't get the perspective of. Although sometimes I like that, because sometimes it's nice to get a character purely from the perspective of others. Like, Zaylee and Amari both care about Zane, and they do a really good job of painting him. Zane was a great strategist in the arena fight on the boat. He was a smart fighter. He was always stubbornly protective of his sister, which is also very Sokka. He always had a lot on his shoulders, and so when other people made mistakes and gave him even more to deal with, then he got frustrated, which I thought was really good because it was very multi-layered of his character. And that time that he actually almost left Zaylee, that was a great show of that, rather than him just yelling at her all the time when she did something reckless. But I thought it was a great flip when Zane and Amari got captured and Zaylee had to save them for once. If you ever think during this book that their path is clear and they're going to finish their quest with no more problems, nope. We get to rest for 2 seconds and then we get another problem. Hey, we just survived the royal guard attack at the temple and the rope bridge collapse, and now we have to compete in a team version of the Hunger Games to get to the Sunstone. Hey, we just survived a massive massacre in the Veggie arena, and now we have to get captured by fighters in Gombe. Zoo's clan of diviners was really funny because they only captured the Poseidon because they had the artifacts, and which I get because they were the ones who took them in the first place, so we're not trusting of Poseidon. But then we're all ruthless and torturing them, but then the second that the siblings show up who have magic, they're like, nah, they're one of us now, we're all good. By the way, let's have a party! Zoo's death was really, really sad, especially because she was such a strong and impressive leader for one so young, but having her on their team in their quest would have just been way too easy. Like, she had healing powers and she had access to a boat. And same thing with Lakin, I think. Like, his death was really sad but necessary because it would have just made it way too easy for them to continue. So now I want to talk about the ending. So if you haven't read through the entire book, just warning. So I really, really liked that the solution to the problem came from the origin story. So we have the interconnecting between Sky Mother and the gods and goddesses and the original sharing of that power with the children of blood and bone. Like that, Zaylee reaching back to her ancestors, back to the ones who originally got their powers from the gods and Sky Mother, was how we brought magic back without the scroll. And also that we get rid of the selectiveness of the diviners, and that now everybody, including Poseidon, has powers, which I'm pretty sure is what happened in the last line of the epilogue. Amari shakes her head. She holds up a bleeding hand, and in the darkness it swirls with vibrant blue light. A white streak crackles like lightning through her black hair. So Poseidon have powers now? I didn't like that the ending was super rushed. I mean, that sentence was literally the last sentence of the epilogue. Like, the epilogue really should be what happened afterwards to Orisha. Did they survive? Was there more fighting? Did Zane and Amari end up together? We'll never know. We'll never tie up those loose ends, because that's all we get. I suppose the reason the last few chapters were rushed was to build suspense, but the quest was so dragged out through the rest of the book that it just went really fast after Zaylee got captured. And that was probably why we got the after-the-fact explanation of why we couldn't go through Jamaica in the first place. Like, the original plan was to go up to Zarya and get a boat and then go to the island. But if you look at the map, like, Jamaica is so much closer to the island. Jamaica is so much closer to the Holy Temple. And, like, Zarya is way over here, so they would have to travel from Gombe up to here. And I'm like, why not just go through Jameta? It would be so much faster. But then we get the explanation that it's actually a crime-ridden city because there are no guards there. The final stage of the plan is really a roller coaster as we start recruiting more help, like the Agbon team that Zane knew and the mercenaries that Rowan led. And suddenly there's this big battle with an instant fix for her powers being gone. And we never got to resolve the Einan situation. So I get that Zaylee needed to have a resolution that was not connected or tied to a man. Like, Einan had a plan that they were going to do it together, and they were going to fix Orisha together, and that was great. But I get that Zaylee, like, her arc meant that she needed to do this alone, that this was something that she had to do. And I guess I thought that was good, that she didn't succeed with a man or with the help of a man. She had this line where she says, I never wanted to let the guards in, and I let their captain in? Like, that thing started all the way in chapter 1 when the guards groped her. But we did get the YA romance, so check that box off. We got the whole opposites attract thing, we got them going from enemies to lovers. Well, actually, it was real life, from enemies to allies to lovers to enemies again. So a few things I liked about the romance. I really liked the dreamscape. I thought it was a great plot device to get them alone. I really liked her teaching him about his god, again connecting back to the spirituality and having that be part of the plot. His powers were fantastic in him falling in love with her because his powers were that he actually read her mind and could feel her memories, whereas her Reaper magic always really creeped me out. Like, having control over life and death and being that kind of bridge, like, that could go bad really, really fast. Him being obsessed with her and always seeing her face and smelling her soul, that it was like sea-scented, those are really great details. And also Zaylee being really curious about him and then keeping his secret for him were really great aspects of their relationship. Well, I guess she really didn't keep his secret for that long because her explanation was that we can totally trust him, is he's a magi! But we never actually really got why he became a magi in the first place. Like, what was with that streak in his hair? I'm gonna go with the interpretation that it was all meant to be. Like, the gods needed somebody to destroy the scroll so that Zaylee would have the power to call back to her ancestors, but the scroll needed to be destroyed in order for her to get to that place, so they needed somebody who not only wanted to destroy the scroll and destroy magic, but also who would have the knowledge of magic in order to try to make that happen. Okay, now I really need to talk about Einan, because I liked his character, and I did not think he deserved the fate he got, or his final moments. Einan did not deserve that. His arc wasn't so much a hero's arc, but maybe an anti-hero who kind of started out at a disadvantage. I always like the idea that, like, how can you blame someone, or how can they be punished when he's done everything he's ever been expected to do, or everything he's ever been asked to do? He, like Amari, was brought up to hate magic and fear magic. But Amari had a friend who was her anchor for her rebellion and who showed her how beautiful magic could be. And her grief is really what fueled her rebellion. Einan's realization, however, came from confusion and self-hate, and then his experiences with magic at the temple, and eventually Zaylee's memories. His arc was definitely longer. It took him feeling Zaylee's sorrow and her heartbreak to really change his mind about his original plan of kill the scroll, kill her, kill magic. But it definitely was a struggle for him to get there, and he didn't have that anchor that Amari did. Also, Amari had Zane and Zaylee and the other diviners that she met along the way to help her reassure her that this was the right thing to do, that they needed to bring magic back. Zaylee could have definitely been Einan's anchor, especially since he was developing feelings for her, but like his entire childhood, his father's belief and influences make his character. Einan's separation from Zaylee was definitely his downfall, because that's when his father started giving him the backstory of his experience, and then having all these doubts flood his brain. And even Zaylee had doubts about magic coming back and being their savior. Hurting Zane was definitely a great point in the story where it caused her doubt for a second, like, is this really the best option? Because it could get out of control really fast, and then she shared that with Einan, so if Zaylee has doubts, it's not that far from Einan having doubts. And I think the second thing that really influenced his doubt was the burner who sacrificed himself. What was his name? So his name was Kwame, and Zaylee saw that sacrifice and the guards invading as the last straw, like, no, magic is definitely necessary, otherwise this will keep happening. But for Einan, that was just evidence of how magic could get out of control so easily and kill without mercy. So when he hears his dad's speech about duty before heart, which is actually an extension of Orisha before self, which he was always thinking of, now he understands. Now that message that his father kept beating into him clicks. Duty before heart. He loves Zayli, but now he thinks he can fix Orisha and stop the fighting without magic. I actually really liked his father's backstory and his speech about duty before heart. I mean, I didn't love it, but I loved it. You waver now because that is what it means to be king. You have your duty and your heart. To choose one means the other must suffer. Because I chose my heart, I will never be with my one true love again. Duty before self. Kingdom before king. Orisha before self. So now it's his previous mission minus kill the girl. So now it's kill the scroll, kill magic. And honestly, I can't blame him. Given his influences, given his life, he believes the answer is not to give the people more ammunition to fight. And of course, his father's impossible standards and his conditional love was solidified when he realized that his son could do magic, and that it was his magic that killed Kaeya. As a side note, Kaeya was an interesting character, just kind of as a tool. At first, we really hate her because she's his dad's mistress, and we think, oh, that's bad. But it worked out because the reason that Saran betrayed his son was because she was somebody that he cared enough about. Saran betrayed his son because she was somebody who meant a lot to him, whose death infuriated him, without that person having to be Ainan's mom. So, mistress worked. Also, that just went to show how corrupt the monarchy went. Like, not only are we killing lots of people, but I'm having an affair. Ainan's death really threw me because I just wasn't expecting it. Like, I expected him to have a happy-ish ending, or I at least expected him to get a resolution with Zayli. I was expecting her to use her Reaper magic to bring him back, maybe? I don't know, maybe it's still possible. Like, after everything, he doesn't get a resolution? You're no son of mine. And he even says, it can't end like this. Also, it was kind of weird to have one of our 3 point of views die. Like, I think there was a chance that the abuse that he suffered at the hands of his father would be enough to make him flip and say that the abuse he suffered is like the abuse that Orisha suffered, and then he would realize that he's bad and he needs to be taken down and I should never ever be on his side, and just completely flip on the monarchy itself. But that was a lesson that Amari learned. So let's talk about Amari. Her perspective started out as the perspective of a noble in Lagos, very naive girl, sheltered, never able to leave the palace, a lot like Jasmine. She had zero clue of what Binta and the other servants went through until she witnessed that death and found out her father's secrets, that he had artifacts taken, and he was the one who had taken away magic rather than it just going away, like Orisha thought. And that set up her character to rebel and basically was the catalyst for the quest. She got info from the scroll and brought it to a diviner who was bent on fixing things. Her character really developed more in the later chapters. At first it was just like, oh, if we don't take her with us, she'll lead the guards to us. Or Mama Egba saw her in a vision, so I guess she's coming with us. Or hey, she sold her dress to get us money for stuff. Especially like in the arena, in the battle in Ibeji, because really, she was a liability. Like, her character was going downhill really fast. And I was like, what is happening to Amari? She's cowering in fear. And then, of course, she was the reason that they won, defending Zayli. And, of course, using her father's training. Very ironic. And then the lion air slowly became a thing. Connected, of course, to her friend Binta, who always said, be brave, Amari. Which then replaced her father's words, which were, strike, Amari. So Amari and Zayli got closer, talking about their doubts and fears, and Ainan, both at Zoo's camp and on the battleship. Amari's confidence is what helped Zayli in the end, and that all led to her fear completely disappearing when she saw her father in that battlement and wanted to run after him. I thought it was great in the final battle how it was her that was his end. At first she was thinking that I can't kill him, he's killed so many people, that won't work, that won't bring an end to this. But then when he wasn't holding back, she was like, nah, he gotta die. So Saran's flaw really was that you can't punish a whole group for a few people's mistakes. His dad supported the Magi, and that one time he wanted to help follow in his father's footsteps, which is also what his wife wanted. And a few bad eggs decided to stage a coup and overthrow the monarchy. Magic is power, and then of course he blacklisted all Magi. All Magi are dangerous, they will never stop trying to fight us. Which is actually a self-fulfilling prophecy, because by fighting against them as a whole, yes, Zaylee also finally comes to see that they will never stop fighting. She kept referencing her father's quote, which was when Lauren was going down in flames, Bubba said, "As long as we don't have magic, they will never treat us with respect. They need to know we can hit them back. If they burn our homes, we burn theirs too." I think that's a good metaphor for confidence and dedication to a cause to use as ammunition. As long as you roll over and take it, nothing will ever change. Other messages of the book could be about believing in yourself and your abilities, or faith in a bigger plan and spirituality. I think the latter is really refreshing to see in a YA novel. Other than that, it's a great story about magic and family and competing loyalties. So thank you, Jimmy Fallon, for starting the Tonight Show Summer Reads and inspiring me to read this book. Thank you, Tomi Adeyemi, for writing it. If you have any thoughts or feelings on this book, feel free to share them with me in the comments. Thanks for listening!